Hello, and welcome to the show. Today, we're talking about Toy Story 3, the video game. This is the first in a brief series of 100% reviews that I'll be taking on for now. Since my channel is new, I'll give a brief overview of why I made this video. For starters, I'm a lifelong gamer. My granddad introduced the Super Nintendo to me when I was 5, and it's been one of my longest running passions for 20 years. About 9 years ago, I took a big break from gaming until about 2018. I was a college student back then, and I had to juggle my work, social, and entertainment time, and I wanted to ensure that everything I did had meaning to it. So, if I played video games, I wanted to have something to show for it. That's why I started achievement hunting. Since then, I've had over 200 100% game completions, and I'm well within the top 1% of all Xbox users with achievements on their profiles. I'm in the hardcore achievement hunting community, and I'm in the top 2% of that community itself. Now I'm just going to take it a step further to help people understand the games that I show and know if it's worth their time on a digestible format. Alright, enough about me. Let's get back to Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3 is a movie tie-in video game to Toy Story 3, which came out in 2010, and most of us know these movie tie-in games, or licensed titles if you will, as really poor quality most of the time. Oftentimes, when a big movie is coming out, the developers are tasked with putting out a video game with shoddy features that aren't necessarily the greatest, and honestly, it makes sense to capitalize on something that's going to be big in the short term. That's why most of these movie tie-in games have been just synonymous with low quality. That said, Toy Story 3 is way different here. In fact, they weren't phoning it in at all. This game is actually kind of an embarrassment of riches when it comes to different play modes and play styles. Now, it's not one of the greatest games ever, but it's certainly more than serviceable as one of these movie tie-in games. So, let's get into it. Toy Story 3 features two separate game modes. The one is a campaign mode or story mode, and that features about 8 levels worth of content. Honestly, it's really short. Might take you 2 or 3 hours, 4 to 5 at the most if you're really looking around for everything. And then it also features the Toy Box mode. Toy Box mode actually makes up the majority of this game in terms of the longevity that you'll put into it, and in total, this game takes about 10 to 15 hours for total completion time, probably less if you get really familiar with the game's mechanics. We'll start with the story mode first. As mentioned previously, the story mode features 8 levels where you play as Woody, Jessie, and Buzz. Now, this isn't a one-for-one remake of Toy Story 3. It does loosely follow the film, but it actually takes a very innovative, unique, and fresh spin on the characters and what you can do with them, as well as taking some liberties with the Toy Story franchise. It does a good job of expanding what you know about the characters and really immersing you in the world of what they do and following all the characters that you love throughout Toy Story in general. Now, Buzz has an amazing mission where you're kind of playing as Buzz Lightyear of Star Command in his own world, fighting Zurg, and that is a standout for this entire game. I gotta say, this mission is just fantastic. It's full of high-octane play styles, a lot of fun, fast-paced action, and really, it features really good platforming too. This game can feel a little bit janky sometimes. Some of the controls leave a little something to be desired, especially with the push and pull mechanics, especially with the jumping, mounting, and occasionally dashing. But with that said, this game for the most part does a really good job of setting out what it accomplishes to do. Be fun. Obviously, when you're playing with toys as a child, it's something that you remember fondly. This game gives a slight nostalgia factor while also really granting the player the permission to just have fun with a childlike nature in terms of their playstyle. In the story mode, you're going to be finding one of each of the main collectible types. That's capsules, characters, and cards. Now, these collectibles are pretty easy to find, and if you're even slightly thorough in anything that you play, then you're going to have no trouble finding most of these. With that said, there are some skill-based achievements, such as not getting detected during a stealth mission, and not dying during the first half of a level, which does prove to be probably the biggest challenge in the game for a game that is admittedly very easy. All told, each level will take you about 20 minutes or less. Most of the criteria for fully completing the campaign includes just thoroughly exploring the level, talking to every character, completing every mission or task, and a couple of those skill-based achievements that I did mention as well. Now, This game doesn't take skill to complete, so honestly, whether you're 10 or you're 25, it doesn't really matter because it's a great game for all ages. And that's what I enjoyed so much about Toy Story 3. While the campaign isn't necessarily something to write home about, it is an enjoyable time that uses the characters effectively. I really enjoyed playing as Buzz and Woody and Jesse, and each have their own unique sort of abilities that help you get through each level. It's a great way to sort of vary things up, and personally, I think that Toy Story's campaign is way better than it should have been. They really didn't have to do such a good job with this, but there's a lot of imagination on display here, and it's great playing in 2024. Now let's get into Toy Box mode. This is where you'll be spending the majority of your time. It's really the meat and potatoes of Toy Story 3 and its standout feature. Now, at the time, something like this hadn't really been featured in a game before because it's kind of this slightly open world, non-linear way for you to try different things, play different missions, collect a million collectibles, and also drive around, go through races, and enjoy the random timed events that do happen throughout the game's story. The main point of Toy Box mode is to complete 103 missions, which are each marked by a gold star, and to build your town along the way. There is a slight story element to it, but really it pales in comparison to just everything that you can do otherwise. You can drive around in cars, complete races, do stunts, use a tool called the Pictomatic to recreate fun moments, and in addition to that, you are collecting 289 capsules. Now, these capsules feature character outfits, hats, and haircuts, and they are all over the place. The majority of them are in plain view, but there's going to be some where you're really scratching your head to find. Now, I do want to give a little bit of advice here. If you're stuck, go to the candy shop and hit that button 29 times with the ball that you can throw. And if you're on the racetrack, on the dirt road, make sure to go up, make that jump, and hit the side of the cliff, and you'll see one of those sneaky little capsules. There's a bunch, honestly, that I could go into in terms of hidden locations, but those were the last ones for me. So I gotta say, keep that in mind. And obviously, if any of you watch us and decide to complete the game for yourself, I'll always be in the comments ready to help or provide helpful tips, hints, whatever you need. So, Toy Box mode does feature a lot of cool things. None of it is really frustrating because it works at such a leisurely pace. I never found myself rushing. I always felt like I was completing something or getting to an end goal, and it is important to find all those capsules first. So really, make sure to do that as much as you can. Otherwise, it's really your own time. Toy Box mode does feature 3 enchanted locations, and by enchanted locations, I just mean fun locations that you can buy. You'll earn coins for completing missions, you'll get stars for completing missions, and you're gonna work with a lot of the most famous characters from the Toy Story franchise. It's really fun. You even get small weapons according to each special location that you complete, and it's one of those games where when you complete everything, there is that satisfaction of saying, you know, I went through all that and it was worth my time. I'm really comparing apples to oranges here, but it's really refreshing that Toy Story 3 offers so much content and a slightly open world that is straightforward enough not to get overwhelmed. Now, with something like Fallout 3, which I have completed, that world is so overwhelming and large, it really makes you wonder what you're going to do next. With Toy Story 3, everything is kind of on a checklist. It's a great way to enjoy the game while also getting the satisfaction of completing it 100%. I really enjoyed how much Toy Story gave to me in terms of its quality content, and while it is janky in some circumstances, the game really stands out above the rest of those movie tie-in titles. The game really punches above its weight here, and Toy Story 3 does a great job, just like the movie, of justifying its existence. And that's about as high of praise as I can give to this type of game. Now, I will say that on some occasions the game was less than interesting because I felt like I was just kind of making those runs for collectibles, but 90% of the time, I was really enjoying myself. It's a ton of fun, especially if you play with a friend too. In this case, I just did the single player because, let's be honest, Who's going to be willing to play Toy Story 3 in 2024 with a friend? Maybe you do. That's great. But in this case, even single player, it is super enjoyable. And if you have a kid, this is a great game to pick up. Overall, Toy Story is a really fun game if you're going just for fun or playing for the 100%. One thing I can really commend this game for is keeping in line with the quality of the Toy Story franchise. As mentioned before, it was kind of hard to justify Toy Story 3 because the first two were so good in terms of movies, and then 3 came along and it was many people's favorite, and a lot of people found it to be the perfect end to the trilogy. In many ways, I find that Toy Story 3 does the same thing for a video game. In line with the franchise, it continues the quality and had an amazing atmosphere that was very relevant to what you know about Toy Story and love about it already. It takes what you like about video games and puts it into one of the most recognizable franchises in the world. The highest praise I can give for this game is the fact that it's a really good 100%, but it's also very fun on its own. You can't really ask for much more than that. And while the game definitely punches above its weight, as we mentioned before, it's not perfect, but it's going to be a good time. If you're a fan of Toy Story or even haven't watched it in 10, 15, 20 years like me, you're still going to have a fun time. I had this game back on the Wii in 2010 and I did play with a friend, and it was so enjoyable back then. But now, even today, it plays very well. I think that's a mark of a great game, or anything for that matter, when it can age with grace. For that reason, Toy Story 3 is worth your time. Seriously, if you're interested, go pick it up from an online retailer or go ahead and grab it right on your console. I got this on Xbox, and so that's how I completed it. I can't speak to the PlayStation or PC versions, but with that in mind, you could probably get the disc version as well. So, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and give my final thoughts on Toy Story 3 as both a completion and a game. So let's break it down. For the 100% difficulty, it's a 2 out of 10. Most of the time, you're just going to be making those collectible runs, and it's not really going to test your skill too much. This is a game that was designed for children, even though it's enjoyable by everybody, but you're not going to have to worry too much about skill. It's an easy game. For the fun factor, that's a 7.5 out of 10. There's lots of stuff to do, tons of fun characters, and a really enjoyable tie-in to Toy Story 3 here. Good stuff all around. That said, it does have a bit of jank to it, and it's not a perfect game, but it does what it sets out to do quite well. For the completion enjoyment, I would go ahead and give it an 8. There's enough collectibles here to where at the end you feel like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I'm done with this. But it is a satisfying journey, especially as you check off each list, whether that's gold stars, missions, or buying different items in the game, completing different Pictomatic missions. It's really, really nice to be able to say, I went through all this, it feels like a complete experience, and I do think I've done everything in the game. That paired with the fun factor, it's an 8 out of 10. Based on how you play games, you can take any of the latter two scores and determine if this one is right for you. Averaged together, those last two scores equal a 7.75 out of 10, which is in line with most of the reviews that I read back in the day about Toy Story 3. But with that in mind, it's worth your time, in my opinion. And that's all you can really ask of a video game. So, with that said, I appreciate you watching. Please give me any feedback as to what I can change about these videos. This one was kind of a little bit on the fly for me. I don't have a script this time around. Tell me if you like the loose format or the more scripted format that you see in some of my movie reviews, but each video should get better, and I greatly appreciate anybody who tunes in here. So if you do decide to stick by for this long, appreciate your time. Thanks so much, and I will see you at the next 100%.